The proof is in the pudding, and the pudding in this case is a football. Boom! Eat my goal! The goalie has got football pie all over his shirt.
Welcome to this latest episode of the Down the Pub podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony Abba, and I'm joined again by Gary Griffiths. Welcome to the show again, Gar. What's going on, man?
I'm good, mate. Arsenal, top of the league. Wanderers, new season's just around the corner. Life couldn't be better. I say that, but I've been in a state of constant stress for the past few months because Arsenal are actually good again. And the fear of actually not winning it now is so overwhelming that I've just stopped enjoying football. So it's nice to be back in a Wanderers context where it's a bit more stress-free.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about any Arsenal stuff on this podcast.
How's Spurs doing?
Well, I'm just a Wanderers fan now, and which means they're probably going to lose every game this year. So it's been a while since we've actually just done a show, just two of us. We had I've done a couple of interviews as you were away, and which is kind of nice. I got to meet a couple of the new players, and we also. We did another live show, so it's we've been kind of trying to keep active. It's kind of hard to kind of keep things ticking over with the off season. I think we've done a pretty good job to try and get some sort of content out there. So
have you got any more interviews lined up?
I haven't right now. I might try and do a few bits and pieces before the season starts. It seems like they actually have a pretty cramped schedule this year, in terms of training camps and going away and stuff like that. So I'll probably get another one or two in just to tie this over until we actually get into the meat of things and get some get back into the games.
Are you going to go over on the 12th to the open training session?
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it. You're
same.
on too, right?
Yeah.
So if anybody's listening and you see me and Gary there, we're actually really famous now, so we don't want you to come bother us. We just want to be left alone because that's what famous people do. We'll sit there with our sunglasses on and our fur coats and our canes, and
exactly.
Just don't bother us. No, but honestly, do come over and say hello. We love to know that somebody's listened to the fucking podcast, so we'd really appreciate it. I must, just before we get into the squad overview and stuff like that, I'm pretty impressed with how quickly the party plane came around for the trip to York. It was there was rumors of it, and then within about 3 days, Derek had organized it, booked it, got some money, and I know that you didn't want to go because
I didn't want to go because I've just got back from a trip to England and blown way too much money, so it probably wasn't wise. I was looking at my credit card thinking, should I or shouldn't I? And before I could decide, it was sold out. So, yeah, if anyone wants to sneak me in their baggage, then I can fold myself up like Flat Stanley, and I'll be all good.
I think that happened to a lot of people. I think a lot of people were kind of waiting to find out the ins and outs of it all, but it came together really, really quickly. And I got a message just saying hey, you've been selected, and I was like, all right, fuck it. I obviously didn't consult my wife that I was going to put that much money away, but I was like, I think it'd be kind of fun to go and see, but I'm not expecting York Lions Stadium to be anything.
Yeah, mate. I'm actually surprised it's sold out, not because it's a good fan base, because it's quite a commitment, isn't it? And when it was announced, I thought this is a good idea, but oh god, what if they don't? What if have we just paid a load of money to charter a flight, and what if we don't sell enough tickets? But yeah, it went really quickly. So happy days.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I haven't been to Ontario, so I know it's only for a day, and I'll probably be wanker drunk the whole day. I hope
beers at the airport.
I hope they're prepared for that, but I'm not too sure whether
you should do like an on the ground podcast where you just spend the day like getting a quick interview with people, and no, seriously, like patch it all together into a podcast. I think that'd be quite entertaining.
I that was kind of one of my ideas with the show before, where we're gonna like get snippets of people's opinions at the grounds and stuff like that. But then it's like when you go to the game and you just want to like have a few, yeah, it does feel like way too much like work.
Yeah, true.
Part of that. So yeah, what I was thinking, I actually have an idea is record myself over the day getting drunker and drunker and drunker and try to make sense of it all by the end. So yeah, but yeah, so I'm looking forward to. I'm gonna try and designate a couple of people to be the ones that have to carry me back to the bus and put me on the plane and get me home. So yeah, so it's pretty exciting. Like they released the preseason squad. There's a couple of I wouldn't say trialists. I think there's like people who have an opportunity to make it to the squad. We've got Korean Sao, who we all know, Anthony Stoller, who was our first round pick in the U Sports draft, and then Aiden Rushanes, who was I think he was our backup keeper last year when Basket was suspended. So it's pretty familiar faces. So yeah, so good luck to them. I know that Aiden has a really good opportunity because we don't actually have a backup keeper right now. So I'm pretty excited. I hope he gets a good chance. But yeah, so overall, Gary, like looking at the squad, like and how it's come together, how happy are you with the players that we've brought in? How happy are you with the overall quality? I think would be a big thing. Like, do you feel it's a big upgrade on last year?
Time will tell on if it's a big upgrade. I think certainly on paper it feels as though it is. I think the recruitment's been really interesting actually, and if you take 1,000-foot view of it, and you start to see some patterns pretty clearly when you look at it from a distance. And I think the first thing that stands out is the profile of player we're bringing in. We're bringing in a lot of athletes, but a lot of athletes who are technically very astute as well. So players that can keep the ball but can also win their duels. And I think that also ties into the age profile of those players we're bringing in as well. Like our average age is down to 23 again. I think it was maybe 24 or close to 25 last season. So we've brought the average age down by adding a lot of players who are coming out of the NCAA or young players who are at Vaughan. But we've also added, to replace some of the experience we've lost, some 28, 27-year-olds as well. Another thing about the recruitment, I think familiarity has been a big buzzword when it comes to it. So there's a lot of players we've brought in who Patrice knows very well, whether that's through Vaughan or NCAA, where he was coaching at Seneca. And I think when you think about this level of football, it's still possible to game the system a little bit here in terms of transfers. I think if you look at the top level of like the Premier League and whatever, it's increasingly difficult to do that because every club's scouting network is so vast. But at this level in the CPL, there's so much talent out there that's untapped. And if you're someone like Patrice, who is very familiar with League One Ontario and very familiar with NCAA as well, you can really game the system. It kind of reminds me of, if anyone was following the Premier League in the 90s, when Arsene Wenger first came in, he knew all of these unheard of French players like Patrick Vieira and Nicolas Anelka, and he just brought them all over to England, and they were amazing. And I feel like this league is a little bit at that point as well right now. So familiarity is massive. The last thing I'd say is, I think we're looking at players who are going to fit his way of playing and his ideology in terms of game models, systems, and shapes. And to not to waffle too much, but I posted a thread a little while ago. It was about Riley Ferrazzo, the left back we signed. And I had a message from someone after I posted it. And it was this guy who was playing college football in Canada. And he'd seen the thread I wrote. And he said, I just wanted to message you because your coach is top class. And I said, oh, that's good. Like, how do you know him? And he said, basically, he was playing against Patrice's Seneca college team. And before the game, as part of like kind of their student role, their coach gave them homework to research the team they were playing, and they had to write a report on them. And his job was to write a report on Patrice's Seneca team. So he sent me this report he wrote about Patrice's team, which completely laid out like how they set up, like what they like to do tactically. And me and him had a really good conversation about it. And he was talking about this idea that Patrice's teams have where in possession, and this isn't like for the whole game, this is only when they're in possession and they're building play. They like to do this thing called 3-box-3. And basically 3-box-3 is you have 3 defenders who play quite narrow. You have 3 attackers who have quite a lot of width, but who invert. And then in the middle, you have 4 midfielders who are shaped like a box. So you have a double defensive pivot, which is made up of the number 6 and the left back who inverts. And you also have like 2 10s playing ahead of them as well. And the whole idea is to like create overloads in the central of the park. So you've got a numerical advantage to play between the lines of the 10s and all of that sort of stuff. But anyway, like when I was looking at the recruitment, I'm really looking at it through that lens and what players do we have that we can plug into each of those positions.
I saw on Twitter that a couple of people were maybe worried about our lack of a goal scorer or a lack of a traditional striker. And I know that a lot of people pointed towards Amla, but like where in the system itself, like who do you see as being like the spearhead for it? Like we're like, you know, looking at our forward line, like we have quite a few deep lying players. We have a couple of like wingers. So who do you see as being the traditional goal scoring threat? And who do you think would be the starter, I guess, would be the question.
I think the first part of that point about bringing in goal scorers, like the fact of the matter is, if someone is a proven goal scorer at this level, then they're not playing in this league anymore, and we're not signing them anymore. Like, it's a development league. You sign players who you think might one day become goal scorers, unless you kind of like get very lucky, like Pacific did with Diaz, or we did with Morelli. In terms of who will be our number 9, I think it'll either be Kosi, Nwafonso.
There you go. That sounds right to me.
Yeah, so I think it will be between Kosi and the guy who we got from who was with the Whitecaps under 23s, Theo Colombe.
Yeah,
he looks really good, actually. Really, really bright, really sharp. He's one of those, and he's not the only one who we've picked up this off season who I think if they hadn't have had injuries at specific times in their development would probably already be playing at a higher level. But you watch him and he's very rounded as a striker. Like, he can play he can play from wide positions, but he can also play as a 9. Really, really good with his back to goal. He's got really soft feet, can lay it off nicely, nice little link up play. But he can also do the other part as well. He can spin off the shoulder, good one-on-ones, good goal scoring record in youth football, which who knows if that'll translate. But I think he's going to be a bit of a dark horse. I think he's going to be someone who we eventually will consider to be this like really high level goal scorer in this league, and hopefully will be in MLS before too long.
I must say, just looking at who we signed and kind of where they've come from, we've definitely moved away from the model that we had under Stephen, where we tended to tap into Quebec, and you know, even like some of the players we got last year were like from colleges that wouldn't be NCAA standard, or kind of more second or third tier colleges in the state. So do you think that's coming from Patrice because he's because he was in the NCAA, or do you think that Matt's just kind of doing his homework a lot more, or where do you think this kind of change has come from?
I think, like in any company, like you lean into the skill sets of the people you have working for you, and if you've got someone like Patrice in the building, then of course you tap into his network of, and he would have scouted all of these players to death because he's worked with them before, he's worked against them or with them before. So I think, yeah, you have to use that, and it's not like they're the only players we've signed as well. We still have like Lorenzo Caligari, we have off the top of my head I can't think of them, but there's a few like Jan Fillion as well. We have other players we've signed who are not from those routes, so those are the ones who I imagine kind of were already in place, who Matt and the scouts had identified, and then your NCAA ones are the ones Patrice would have like pointed out to us.
Yeah, I've been honest, like I'm really impressed. I think that it kind of started with Mo Omar, like who brought in, who kind of had a bit of pedigree, and obviously it took him a while to change to the standard or the professional side of things. I mean, and I think we've kind of mentioned it's a couple of times where we need to kind of maybe be a little bit patient. You know, like a lot of these guys like haven't played professionally, maybe, or like, you know, the kind of the where we are with the CPL right now. So I think there's going to be like a little bit of we kind of need to be a little bit patient at the beginning. But I must say, looking at the squad overall, you know, I'm really really excited with who we have. Like we're kind of talking earlier on, I just feel like for the past couple of seasons we've been that kind of team where if somebody like a Morelli or like a Zach Fernandez were injured, we never really had the players come in who are good enough to kind of replace them. And I never felt like, you know, it was two people fighting for the one spot in a sense. It was always, we just need a gap plugger, you know what I mean? And that's no offense to whoever was here. But here I feel like, you know, if somebody gets injured, and it is going to happen, it's part of the game. I'm really impressed with the depth that we have in the squad. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. And I think before we had single points of failure, didn't we? So as soon as Morelli got injured, we all just went, well, that's the season done. And it pretty much was, because he was everything to us. And that bleeds in a little bit to, so philosophically, the way I see Stephen Hart as a coach philosophically was that he wants his teams to be really rigid and defensively sound, and then his attackers have all the freedom in the world to just go and win games. I think he's kind of a bit old school like that, and a bit of a romantic. But when all of that revolves around one person, Morelli being this like kind of like jazz playing soloist up front doing what he wants and roaming where he wants, if you take that out, then the whole thing just falls to pieces, which is what happened. Whereas I think Patrice is far more of a systems coach, like a very modern coach who like everyone has roles in the team rather than kind of free for all positions. There's obviously individuality is encouraged, but it's more systems based. So the idea is you can just plug in a different player to play the same role, and you kind of keep on going as usual. So yeah, I think hopefully injuries, if they happen, won't be as big of a blow this time round.
Yeah, you kind of like, you're right though. Like with modern football, we are kind of tending to move away from that superstar thing, whereas like I just said, like, you know, it's more about the squad now, where you know, you definitely see like with Pep, where it's like if somebody's injured, just the person that comes in knows the exact same role, and it's like, you know, obviously the players are at a very high standard, they pay a lot of money for them, but there's always like plenty of competition. But you know, if somebody gets injured, it just feels like there's always somebody good enough just to come in and step in. I think we've been kind of missing that. As you said, like with Morelli, as soon as that happened last year, you know, like we kind of all, it just fell apart. So, you know, speaking of Gel, like I at the introduction, at the point of Patrice, it kind of felt like it was really doom and gloomy, where it was almost like he's done, he's gone. And the message that came out the other day, like it almost felt like that he will be back in some capacity, but it's going to be more towards it. So I feel like
I would be
timer
shocked
emotions.
if he ever plays for Wanderers again. If he ever plays again, I'll be shocked.
Yeah.
That's not based on any like insider info or anything. Just if you just like, you don't have to read the tea leaves too much to see, like on Instagram, like he's got a kid on the way. Congratulations to him, by the way. He's very well in there with his family's business. What, like, I just don't see the motivation for him to come back. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, I think I've always kind of like, for the past couple of months, been looking at this season and just assumed he wouldn't be there. So I wasn't at all surprised, to be honest.
It almost feels like, and I think somebody said it on Twitter, that it almost feels like that if we're on a quest for the playoffs towards the end of the year, and we kind of need that extra
in, yeah.
It kind of feels that way, like, because I have noticed that, like, you know, he's back. You know, like last year before the season, he was like, he's big into MMA, and he was like training, and as you mentioned, like obviously he's got a kid in the way and priorities have changed, but he seems to be back doing the MMA stuff now, and it feels like he's starting to kind of train again, kind of thing. So, and I just felt like that message like was just like a glimmer of hope. I'd like to see him back, and being honest, it's purely selfish reasons. It's not just to see him play like so he's because he's a really good player. It's because he's a really good person. He's a really nice guy, and anybody's ever talked to him, like he's fun to be around. And it just feels shitty for him to go out on such a low like that. That I'd like to just see him come back and even just have, even if the club just bring him up for a game and just we get a proper chance to say goodbye to him for everything he's done, because as I said, he's a really good person, and hopefully we get to do that.
Just really quickly on Morelli, I don't think anyone at the club would admit this, and nor should they, but I don't think he's a good fit for us right now. Even good Morelli, which I know sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but when I think about the way Patrice plays, I don't see where he fits in that role. Like, is he one of the 2 10s who's going to be super pressy and like really good at that side of the game off the ball? No, that's not him. Is he going to be a focal point 9? That's not really him either. Like, he's a brilliant player, so he'd probably make it work, but his skill set is so suited to certain teams, and it was suited to us before. Like I said, Stephen Hart giving him all the freedom in the world, roam about, find passes, score goals. Brilliant player for that sort of system. But this, I don't see it. Like, when there was that still that point where I thought maybe he would be back, I was thinking, like, where though? He just doesn't fit into the way we play now. Lovely guy.
So
like, really nice guy. I love him. Like, I love him as a player, but this, I just don't see how he'd fit in here.
All right, moving swiftly along here, Dr. Doom. No,
I'm being positive. Like, I think, like, no, I
feel like the first season, like, and obviously it was a different setup when we did the Island games. I think he had a different role. I think he actually, and I know he didn't enjoy playing the role, but he did there was an awful lot of running in his legs. He had to do a lot of tracking, he had a lot of do pressing, because that's the way Stephen has set us up. So I think he is capable of doing it. Whether he enjoys doing it, and that's going to make him want to come back, is a different story. So, I think he does have that in him. I just don't know whether it's what he wants to do, because obviously he was a lot happier playing that free role where he could just do everything and just be, the dude who just pops up when he's needed, and you know what I mean? So
yeah, and he's incredibly efficient at that. Like, he's brilliant in that role.
Yeah,
but that's not the way we are going to play. So yeah.
So I did want to just touch a little bit on defense, like with goalkeepers and stuff like that. Like, and we do have and I've talked to Ryan James and I've talked to Jan Filion about this. I just want to kind of get your thoughts on it. We have a very young back line apart from those two. I'm not saying they're over the hill or anything like that, but you know what I mean. So do you think that we've recruited well in defense, and do you think having will Ryan especially like see a lot of game time, do you think, or do you think it's going to be Ferrazzo who's going to be playing in that role because he's done it for Patrice before? And how important was it for them to bring in an experience like that?
Hugely important, yeah, because if you look at Omar, Christian Campagna, even Jake Ruby is a lot younger than people think he is as well, because he's been here since year 2. You think he's older, but he's only 22. So that's a really young group of defenders. And Daniel Nimick, the other guy they signed as well, the British guy, he's very young too. So you need them old heads to organize them and just keep them calm in those precious situations. So yeah, like if you're Jan, if you're Ryan James, I think they're both 27, 28. So they're the right age to be that sort of role in these young players' development. Yeah, huge responsibility on them to like kind of just manage the dressing room, manage that back line. I think Ryan James will definitely start. I think the club are well aware that we've never really had a good left back. Apologies if any of the former left backs are listening, which I very much doubt they will be. But we've never really, I mean, I honestly think De Carolis was probably the best we've had, and probably the most likely to be listening as well, so I'll sneak that one in there. But yeah, so I think that's one position we've never had a good player in, really. And I think Ryan James and Riley Ferrazzo are both very good. It's such an important position as well in the way Patrice sets up. Like, I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but this idea of a left back who inverts, it's not just a case of that left back has to think about doing that, because if a left back drops into centre midfield, there's a massive a massive area of space behind him as well. So you need a left centre back who's proper switched on, who's a big space centre back who can look at that area and go, right, if anything comes down there, I need to sniff that out, because every team in the league has a scouting department. Every team in the league is going to go, oh, fuck, Wanderers always invert their left back. That means there's a fucking shitload of space behind that left back. We're going to attack down there, which is what is going to happen, because it's just the trade-off. So you need centre-backs who are well aware of that and can shuffle over and block off that space. So, I think Ryan James will probably start, because he used to be a centre midfielder as well. So he will be able to do that role, no problem. But it's nice to have a backup in Riley Ferrazzo, who did that tremendously well for Vaughan as well. So you've got two players who can do it, no problem at all.
So looking at like the goalkeepers, obviously like last year we had I wouldn't say a clash of egos, but a clash of egos. Because we had two goalkeepers who were good enough, I think, to be the starting goalkeeper, and I think it was that kind of stuff always ends in tears, and it's why a lot of clubs tend to have one outstanding goalkeeper and then kind of one who's maybe an up and comer, and I think that's kind of where the Wanderers are looking this year. Like Jan is, I think, is probably going to be the best goalkeeper in the league this year, and I know that's saying a lot, but no pressure on him, but I really think so. But
just because he's your mate now, you're
no, I really don't like him. I don't think he's a horrible. No, I'm joking. No, but honestly, I think it's definitely a position that we needed to shore up a little bit. Like I think that Christian was a really good goalkeeper, but he had obviously his faults, and the same with like Kieran. I think is going to do really well in Pacific. But
have they signed him as a number one? I haven't looked at who their other goalkeeper is.
So I think it's going to be close, and I think I think he's got a really good chance to be perfectly honest with you. And I think I really don't think that maybe he wasn't ready for it here. Maybe that's just my thinking, and I think that's why they saw it as a trouble spot and brought in somebody. But I was just wondering, like, have you seen much of Aiden, and do you think that he is good enough to step into the breach if God forbid, like if Jan gets injured or something?
I haven't got a clue, mate. I don't know goalies. Like I'm not sure at all. Like all I know is, like, if you're a goalkeeper playing for us, then now you need to be pretty good with your feet. You don't need to be Edison. You don't need to be one of those sorts of goalies, but you need to be capable enough to build play with the ball at your feet. I'm sure when they were recruiting goalies and looking at goalies, that's something they looked at. But yeah, is it Aiden, isn't it? His first name? I'm not going to try and pronounce the second name. Only thing I know about him, little nugget of information, he's an Everton fan. And I know that because before we'd even signed him, I went to watch a SMU game last autumn at some point, and him and the Dow players were sitting near me, and I was just looked over and I was like, oh, that's the guy that's been trialing, and he had an Everton jacket on, so we've got a few Everton fans in our ranks, so they'll be happy about that.
So obviously his that brings his judgment into
and his idol's fucking Jordan Pickford as well.
Oh Jesus Christ! Okay, so we're gonna need a new backup goalkeeper. This kid's out there. I'm joking. No, but I think I saw a little bit of him last year. Like obviously just during the warm ups, because he was kind of in and around the squad, and he seems decent. It's just gonna be one of those things. I hope he gets a good run out in. Because I'm sure they know what Jan can do. It'd be kind of nice for him to get a run out and just see what he can do in some of these practice games, just to kind of have a little bit of pressure on him. But yeah,
would he have to go back to school then in August, at the end of August, if he's? I hadn't thought about that side of it. So maybe, who knows what they're going to do there then. I mean, they'll definitely have two goalkeepers at the start of the season. It won't just be Jan, but yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I'm sure that Jan Michael Williams is probably still
ready to suit up. He'd love that, wouldn't he?
It's like I feel like that poor man has to bring goalkeeper gloves or maybe just in case. So just moving into the midfield, we've kind of looked a little bit at the defenders, looked a little bit at the goalkeepers. Look, moving into midfield, you kind of mentioned there that with the box, so we'll have like two kind of deeper players and then two attacking players. Like, so who do you see starting that that kind of role? Like, who do you see between the two deep sixes and or in that kind of deeper role, and who do you see as the attacking players?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if so the box is more like when we're building play. I think if you just look on a team sheet and a formation, it will probably be, there'll be three in there probably. Like there'll be a six and there'll be a couple of, I mean, whether you want to call them eights or tens is up to you. They're kind of 8.5s, 9.5s. They're somewhere between playing as eights and tens. So there'll be the six will either be Lorenzo Caligari.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, it'll probably be him because I mean, fucking hell, his resume is pretty good. But it's kind of his resume is CPL good. Like there's quite a few players in the league, like Tabla, who you're like, oh fuck, he played for Barcelona. But then if you kind of dig deeply into it, you think, oh, okay.
I think York this year have a lot of that. If you look at like the CVs of like a lot of their players they brought in, like it just seems like I think the Angus kind of dipped into Holland or the Netherlands and
got Utrecht played, didn't he? FC Utrecht.
Yeah, so he's found like he's found like kind of a bunch of players like that, and they have a good pedigree, but there's always that underlying question of like how the fuck have they ended up in this league if they have that pedigree. So yeah, I think
same as Vancouver signing yesterday. Same thing with him.
Yeah, but I feel like the Caligari, like I think I don't know if he was ever going to be a PSG player anyway, because it's like they don't. The way that they do business, that's not what they want. Is like they just want somebody who's oven ready. They don't want to bring a guy through, and he just seems to kind of fell through the cracks a little bit. He went to Genoa, and that didn't seem to work out, and then he went back to France, and so I think this is probably it's a good opportunity for him, and it's a good opportunity for us to get a player who's probably hungry enough that he still wants to stay in the game, and it could be a Morelli kind of situation where he's probably too good for this league, but he needs to show it. You know what I mean? So
And I mean, technically, he's probably going to be one of, if not the best player on the team, just because of like the grounding he's had in the PSG academy. Technically, he'll be well up there. I mean, I have slight doubts about the physicality and how he's going to handle that side of it. But at the end of the day, he's going to be part of our defensive five. There'll be the defenders and him just sitting in front of them. And I think the best version of him will be someone who just picks the ball up from the centre backs and plays at his own pace and builds a game from the sixth position. And we've also got Thomas Geraldo as backup / pushing to be the starter there, who, like, the stuff I've heard from training camp since it started has been that people are really, really impressed with him. And he's someone, remember, who was close to the impact the Montreal first team, but injuries just kind of stopped that from happening. So if he can stay fit, then he could be a massive breakout player this season. Across the rest of the midfield, the one I'm really looking forward to seeing in the flesh is Arman Wilson, who again comes from the NCAA. But if you look at his skill set and you look at what he can do, I don't see any limitations with him whatsoever. Like he's 6'3". Technically he's superb, like brilliant first touch, soft feet, all the fucking golf clubs in his bag. Like he can ping it like right to left, he can play short, he can punch it into the forwards. Like really, really good player who I'm very excited about seeing the development of. He reminds me kind of stylistically, he's not a million miles from Rampy, to be honest. He's from that sort of mold. Callum Watson, English guy, lovely guy to talk to, big gooner, another really really promising player. And I can see him like being a press monster as well. Like you can just see him like kind of playing in one of those 10 positions, or even as a 6, but being a more proactive 6, just pressing the other team to death. Like he's a very like modern British midfielder, because he's kind of got that old school British thing of like smashing into players, being very aggressive, but equally a bit more cultured. Like he's got a pass for him, either needle passes. So yeah, another really good player. Rampy, I mean, we know Rampy and his qualities. I think he's going to be an 8 this season. I don't think he's a 6 anymore because we've got a lot more depth there now. So yeah, the midfield looks really good to me. On paper, I really like the look of our midfield this season, and Aidan Daniels as well, who so much potential, didn't live up to it last season, but there's so much talent in Aidan Daniels' feet that it's going to come right eventually. So yeah, very excited about the midfield.
I'm the thing I'm really excited about is this, like you're saying, that they can all pick a pass. And I think that was one of our big things last year, that we didn't have a person who can play a true ball, and just kind of cut defense open. And I think looking at the pedigree and the skill sets that we have in there, I think that's been addressed. So yeah, I'm super excited. Callum Watson, like Matt Fegan was. I've never seen him so excited about a player before. he was like, he really likes Callum Watson, and I think he's really excited what he can bring to the team. So
just a little nugget on Callum Watson, just because, and he definitely didn't tell me this confidentially because it's not like a secret thing. But I was chatting to him at the pub night we did, and he said like when the club approached him, like the dossier like Patrice had made on him, like all of the information, like how Patrice sold the club to him was like Patrice knew everything about him, had such clear information about what role he'd play in the team. And he said his agent said to him, like, this isn't like common, having a coach who knows you this well already and can like fit you into the team this well already. So yeah, that shows from Patrice's side, like that recruitment element is really important.
Oh, big time, man. Like, if you go to Wikipedia, which is the level of the research I've done, it said that he received offers to attend preseason with Rails, Salt Lake, and Houston Dynamo, but instead opted to sign a guaranteed contract with the Wanderers. So
hello, you.
Yeah, I know, but I honestly think that that was one of the things that was being said, that he had options, and I think he just really wanted to have, because he's been through the grind too in England with he's been at 7th, 8th tier teams which he probably doesn't belong in, and then he went to the States. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him play. So I guess that leaves us, we kind of touched on the forwards already. So we were talking to Derek Martin earlier on, and he kind of asked us what we thought, how we're looking compared to the other teams, and I kind of wanted to get your thoughts of haven't seen what other teams are bringing in. And I know you don't really care too much about other teams, but we kind of have to, I guess, watch what they're doing. So
mate, we need to get our listener numbers up. We might as well fucking lean right into the other teams this year.
Well, it's
we've got Forge Corner. We might as well have York Yard.
Yeah, there we go.
Kind of alliteration you want.
Pacific Park. Calgary Court. Anyhow,
you just keep going. I'll have a nap.
Yeah. Sorry, Winnipeg window. So, what you call it? So I mean, like, looking at what the other teams and what they've been bringing in, do you think we're stacking up as being one of the top tier teams, or do you see us fitting in into the greater scheme of things?
It's hard to know, because our recruitment has been so like. It's unknowns, that NCAA translation, how it translates, the League One Ontario, how does that translate, players from the PSG Academy, like it's really difficult to tell. Looking at the other teams in the league, Forge will be good again, because Forge are always good and they've not had much turnover. Pacific really interests me, actually, because they've lost Bustos, who, like, I don't particularly rate him that highly. I know that really pissed a few people off when I said that on Twitter once, but I don't think he's as good as he thinks he is, or other people think he is. But they've still lost him, and he was an important part of their team. And they've signed Ongaro, who, like, stylistically, that is a fucking massive departure from having 5'2" little Marco Bustos on your wing, like plugging in like a 6'8" or whatever the fuck he is, Ongaro into the team. That's you're changing the way you play fundamentally with someone like that. So they're going to be interesting. Like, Aparicio coming back's massive, because he's a brilliant little player. York, I think York are going to be up there. I think York look really, really strong. I like Babuli. I think is one of the best players in the league. Bringing in what's your old boy from Ottawa called, the big centre forward?
Brian Wright.
yeah, bringing him in as well. Like those two are just going to knock some defenders about this season. So they're going to be really, really threatening. They've got Jeremy as well. York will be up there. Forge will be up there. Cavalry, I don't see it. I I know people around the club at Cavalry, and it wasn't a happy camp last season. Like that dressing room was not a good place to be a lot of the time. And I think some of the players who were involved are probably still at the club. And yeah, I think they're gonna have a bit of a shit season next year, Cavalry. It's not been a happy camp for a little while. So Vancouver, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Forge York, I think we'll be up there as well because always hopeful in pre-season. And then Ottawa, I don't know Ottawa actually, because they've lost Tabler, they've lost pace, they've lost Becky, they've lost experience and leadership. So you just don't know what you're going to get with them, do you?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. I feel like they've uh, brought in some good players, and they've also lost some good players. So it's going to be it's definitely going to be interesting. I think with like Calvary, they've lost that kind of core that they had. Like they've lost two of the big parts of that core they had when they started, like in Nick Ledgerwood, and now Mason Trafford's retired. So
Oh yeah, forgot about that. Yeah.
they're big shoes to fill. So it's going to be interesting to see um like where they end up. I think Vancouver are definitely going to be an unknown thing, but I think they might actually surprise a few people because I think they've signed some okay players. They just signed some guy from Liga MX or some guy who played in the league who has a decent pedigree. So I think they'll probably upset a couple of people. I think it's I definitely don't think they're going to be an FC Edmonton and just be miles off the rest.
No.
I think they might actually upset a few people. It's definitely interesting. I think that kind of forge where they seem to be so far ahead of everybody just seems to the gap every year seems to get a little bit closer, and they really haven't brought in that. They've kind of kept, and they've done really well in keeping the core that they had because the core is really good, right? And I think having Jordan Hamilton maybe like as a full season, not coming in halfway through, it will definitely help them too. So it's going to be interesting to see
who would be your top four.
I think I said today when we were talking, what did let me just bring it up here because rather than me having 7 different answers to this, I'm gonna go on like loads of shows and just give like different answers till like one of them's right, and then just
are you going back on CBC soon?
No.
Anthony Abbott, CBC personality. Local
yes,
hard man and CBC personality.
I am known. So what I went with was Forge, Halifax, Ottawa, Cavalry, York, Pacific, Valor, and Vancouver. So
I'd go top 2 the same, but York 3rd and Ottawa 4th would be mine.
Yeah, I think Pacific picking up Angaro, as you said, that's a huge signing for them. But I still think they've lost, like from that championship winning season, they've lost so many pieces from that in the space of 2 years.
Yeah,
that's a huge turnover. And
would you think of Ongaro? Like he clearly desperately wants to be out of this league. Like every year he tries to leave, and then he just fucking ends up back here. He must be so sick of like, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go again.
I know, like I just can't wait to see. I'd love to see his face when he tips into York Lions Stadium and just goes like, for fuck's sakes, here we go again.
He calls up his agent in like July and is like, what you got for me then?
Walked into the fucking container dressing room with the Wanderers grounds like, for fuck's sakes.
Go again.
I think he knows that this league is a stepping stone because he's obviously had a couple of like little nibbles outside of wherever, but it's just I don't think the grass. I think he's nosing that grass is not green on the other side because I mean the first season that I think during off season he went to Denmark to the second division in Denmark, and then he was in the Romanian Premier League I think for like a little bit, and then he tipped up in MLS Next Pro because I think Vancouver just needed somebody, and he did actually really well there. So it's kind of surprising they didn't pick him up this year. And I think Pacific is a good fit for him. And I think as well, like I honestly think he just scores goals, doesn't he? Like he is a decent player and really good pickup. But I'm, like last year, was it last year or the year before when Halifax were freaking out saying we should have gone for him, blah 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 blah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that
Yeah,
little Twitter spat.
but like I like now I'm like looking at what we have, and I don't actually think he'd fit into what we're trying to do anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like I think from your interview, I think Simon Springer interviewed Patrice from having met him, been at press conferences and like having him on the show and stuff like that. I definitely think we're in the right hands. I really like what he's done. Like the rumblings coming from the training sessions are like everybody seems like he's the right person. He's brought in a really good team around him. Like, he's brought in people into the right roles and stuff like that. So I really think the future's bright. And I know I just really feel I hope to God I'm not here in 3 months having to sit through the bullshit that we sat through last year. So,
I know
it
some of those like late season podcasts
uh,
were pretty dicey, weren't they?
oh man, like I was
Uh,
honestly like I was necking like Prozac before we came on just to like cheer myself up, and I was like watch, watching like really like sad movies and stuff like that, just like, oh God, even this is better than watching The Wanderer. So yeah, it's and there's a lot of buzz around again. I feel like everybody's spirits have been kind of lifted up. There was like towards the end of the season, even in the stands, everything wasn't quite right. There was, and I think a lot of stem from what was being put out onto the pitch. So yeah, I'm really excited. I actually bumped into Stephen Hart in the shopping center
did you?
the other day, and I couldn't stop to say hello. He's probably just like, who the fuck is this guy? But I was like talking to like a little bit, and he seems in really good spirits. And he said that if he's around, he's going to try and come to a game in the summer and stuff like that. So I think
Yeah.
I think Steven's been around the game long enough to know that like it was nothing personal, and I think he's just it's part of the job, and you kind of move on, and you do with something new, right? So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hopefully. Oh, that'd be great if he comes to a game. I think now we're out of like that little toxic period. I think people would probably treat him the way he deserves to be treated and give him the respect he deserves. So that'd be
without
good.
a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
So just before we finished, we had some listener questions, which you were very kind enough to send over to me.
Sent you a stream of screenshots.
I know. I'm trying.
Sure, you'd have rather
Yeah.
them in a different format, but
This from Wander Dave. Does Patrice tend to use all of his subs? You might know the answer to that one.
I don't actually. Yeah, I have no idea. But I do think that's an interesting, like, I think that's an interesting development globally in the game, is the move towards 5 subs, and how essentially now you can change half of your team at half time or at any point in the game. So I think like a new part of a coach's job is managing squad, and I think it's going to become more about not how many games you play a season, how many minutes you play in a season, because you can have finishers now, can't you? You can have players who, if you've got 2 equally good players for the same position, you can have someone plays for 50 minutes and someone plays for 40, and vice versa, to keep everyone fresh. So yeah, interesting to see that.
I think a lot of the questions we got, we've touched upon. So I hope people don't think I'm being rude. But we did like touch on quite a lot. A lot of people did ask how we stacked up against the rest of the league.
Yeah,
Dave asked,
there's some stuff about tactics as well, and I think like we talked about earlier, like it's going to be multiple tactics across the season, multiple formations across the season. Will be 4-1-4-1, will be 4-3-3, will be 3-4 box 3, will be all sorts, and I think it'll be horses for courses, which will be fun. It'll be fun for us, like analyzing it week to week, like, oh fuck, what did he do this week? And
and I think that was like one of the big things, like what we did before. We were very rigid in what we did. It was very rare we changed systems. So I think that answers Anthony Germana's question. I think we answered Halifax Steve's question. Denton he asked Anthony Stoller gets to attend a training camp in a team with a full roster. Is there any point to drafting from Eastern universities only, or is it just a different way to create an under-23 squad?
I think their focus is on local talent, so they're going to try and go for Eastern universities as much as possible. And yeah, it can only be good for the under-23, under-18 stuff as well, which I'm very excited about this season. I
was talking to Ryan James, and like he wants to be part of that, and I think that was probably part of the selling point to him, is that, like, because I think he got some scholarship down in the States for his coaching badges or something like that.
He came across really well in that interview you did with him. I thought he sounded like a really nice person.
Yeah,
smart as well.
yeah, big time. I think that it's really going to help the Wanderers with their community stuff as well. But just going back to the university thing, I think the reason why they probably pick Eastern universities, and I think Calvary kind of tend to do the same thing, is that A, they probably know the player, to be honest. They're probably like, it's easier to scout them, and B, it just builds like good relationships with the universities, and I think that's probably what they want to do to help fill up that under 23 thing, is to have good relationships with the local universities. So that's probably why. And the last one from Denton, which Wanderer runs your favorite Instagram account?
I don't know. I don't really use Instagram that much. A fucking either former Wanderer, Pereira. Let's just go with Pereira because he was.
Because we don't want to forget him. He's a fucking
No,
legend.
exactly. I got to keep his flag burning.
I would actually say I do enjoy Aiden Daniels, because he's a foodie. Him and Mateo used to
Oh yeah,
have a food account, and he still puts up a lot of his foodie stuff, and he's an amazing cook. So I do
yeah.
enjoy look at that. So I would probably go with Daniels, and you just go with.
Actually, I'm going to go Jake Ruby because he never posts. I don't even know if he's got an Instagram account, and I quite enjoy the fact that he's a 22-year-old who has no interest in social media. That's quite nice.
I think it's so. Yeah, it's just been fun. It actually feels like we're starting to ramp things back up again, build a bit momentum. We have the kit launch on Tuesday.
Yep, Tuesday. Are you going?
Yeah, I did RSVP. I'm not too sure if I have if I'm allowed to with my wife, but I will definitely check.
You know what? I think I love the whole kit launch thing around football clubs because it's literally like if you think of like your archetypal football fan, they look like you and me. They have shit dress sense, and for one day a year, they're like they become experts on fashion and what looks good. And it's literally like getting a load of like fucking fashion designers who have never watched a game of football in their life to judge who played well in a game. Like us lot trying to tell them what good clothing is it's absurd, quite frankly.
And also that like every Wanderers jersey I've ever bought doesn't fit me because I'm a big fat bastard. So yeah.
But you play football once a week, don't you?
I actually play football twice a week, and
shape your life, mate.
But it's it's what happens in the other 5 days is the problem. So there's way too much Guinness and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. As you said, yeah, we all get to sit there like, and it's like the Paris Fashion Week where we all sit around with notepads going like, I did not like the neckline on that.
Which player are they going to get to awkwardly walk out wearing the kit and go?
I think like last year was like fucking dreadful because it was in the freezing fucking cold and the players
nobody
wanted to be there. I think the year just before COVID, it was 2020, just before that hit. We were talking about this the other day on the group chat. Was Sano, there was Scott Firth and Oxner were the models.
Yeah. Well, in the first year they sent Scott Firth and Ouattara out to Toronto to do the launch. It was them two with the chosen ones.
Yes. But it was really the ones during COVID were weird, where they did like the oh my god, it was like, do you not remember like they did it over Zoom where they were like they had like a box.
Oh yeah.
They did this. It was like the worst jersey reveals of all time. But anyway,
that's when York had that away kit with Google Maps on it, didn't they?
I still think that's probably the worst CPL jersey of all time. I think it's probably the worst jersey I've ever seen in my entire life, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, so Gary, this has been amazing. It's good to be back. And we will probably, I think after the training session, maybe do just to update people on what we've seen, and then it won't be too long before the season gets started. So yeah,
can't wait. What are we, 2 months, a month, 6 weeks away?